Now, that, of course, opens up an enormous can of worms.
And massive potential bills.
I was going to say, the costs, if it goes to the private sector.
And the liabilities. And so I think this has not particularly been thought through. Back in an envelope, we think?
Well, you might say that, Eleanor. You might say that. I'm not going to subscribe to that necessarily. The Independent also has the front page of a smiling Nigel Farage there. Now, that looks like a bar to me. He's going into a bar, isn't he? Or is he coming out of a bar? I'm not sure what he is.
I'm somewhat of, I don't know whether Eleanor agrees with this, I'm somewhat of a cynic of flavours of the month, particularly in politics. You know, my mind goes back, whatever UKIP does on Thursday in the local elections, I remember the Greens were getting 15 to 20% of the vote in the David Icke era, I seem to remember, in those European elections. And dare I mention there was something called the SDP as well, which had its ups, some very big ups.
And some big downs.
Very big downs.
So UKIP's a flash in the pan, you reckon?
Well, I think it will be very difficult setting up a new political party in this country is immensely difficult, as modern history has shown us.
I think it's becoming a vehicle for the protest vote. I think it'll probably do pretty well on Thursday, but I think we're beginning to see the kind of unacceptable face of UKIP, which is there's the chap on one of the websites today doing a Nazi salute. Over the weekend there were all sorts of stories about unsavoury backgrounds of possible UKIP candidates.
But the press seems to be wanting to dig these stories up. I mean, they haven't been doing that for months, and then all of a sudden, as we get to an election, boom, it all comes out.
It'll be the two other rival political parties moving into kind of pre-election slur mode and also trying to say to the public...
These stories aren't just
finding pictures
from the media.
Of guys allegedly doing Nazi salutes.
No, well, they obviously have been, but people haven't been looking for it particularly hard.
Right,
and I think there's also a bit of a reality check, which is saying, this is a serious election on Thursday. Are you really sure that you want to vote into running your local council some guy who's completely unchecked or woman who may have very rather dodgy far-right leaning?
Clowns, according to Kenneth
Clark.
Exactly. And this is as nothing to what you will get come the general
election, indeed.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
Sure. Indeed,
But
the
also,
mud will really be
if
slung
UKIP move from being protest party to a serious political party, they will come under much more scrutiny, and we're going to see a lot more of this.
More of this kind of stuff. OK, moving on to the Telegraph. We reckon that the great civil service sell-off was perhaps not a good idea. GPS tags for dementia patients. Now, that seems like a good idea, doesn't it?
Seems like a good idea, but why am I uneasy about it? Am I alone, Eleanor, being uneasy about it? I mean, but it's being introduced, the top of this story is it's Sussex Police. But in fact, we discover that more than 100 local authorities are already using similar GPS devices to track people suffering from dementia. And that is not some small number. There are currently 800,000 people said to be suffering from dementia, and that figure is likely to rise to 1 million.
Explain your unease.
My unease is shared by, some of the charities who are saying there has got to be a more humane way of coping with somebody's mental state than this. And it has, it is tagging, is it not?
Well, that's what people are saying. I have to say, as someone whose grandpa used to go missing and everyone would be terrified about where he was. He died quite a long time ago now, but I think if then we'd been told that we could have given him something which would have meant that when he kind of got lost and was rather confused and was up the village and didn't know where he was, and that we could find him. And it also radios straight through, that they have something which radios straight through so you can find out where they are and someone who's confused can seek help. I mean, that doesn't strike me as such a bad thing. I did write a column about the need maybe for a granny cam for people who are in old people's homes, so that you could check what was going on. People who use nannies or have people in their houses sometimes set up these cameras so they can see what's happening to their children while they're at work. And I wrote a column a while ago saying, well, maybe that's quite a good thing if we're worried about people being mistreated in old people's homes. So I think that, just because it's used for prisoners or for people who are criminals doesn't necessarily mean to say that it's a bad thing. It might be a rather humane and good thing for people who are worried about their relatives,
it's also
particularly if they can't be there and they're on their own.
It's also going to save a shed load of money as well.
Can I put this quote, though, from Mr. Duncan Jordan, the National Officer of the National Pensioners Convention, saying it just feels so wrong.
Yeah, but I think one mustn't be too squeamish about technology which might be being used for more.
Well, I have to say, older people are squeamish
about technology.
About technology,
And I'm
yes,
saying
that's
just because
true.
you're squeamish about technology doesn't necessarily
And it
mean
doesn't
it's a
mean
bad thing.
it doesn't mean you're old, David.
No.
You look very young to me.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
We might get onto that later.
The Daily Telegraph also has their Tebbit. You can't blame the Tories for voting UKIP. Now, Eleanor, my next question to that is, why not?
Well, this is Tebbit. We know that he has a reputation for being kind of a bit naughty on these issues, particularly when elections come round. And he's definitely on the right-hand side of the Tory party.
Just a minute.
Which has moved to the centre.
Eleanor, I must ask you a question. How would the then Norman Tebbit have reacted had some older Tory in the 1980s said something like this?
Well,
he would have described them as perhaps fruitcakes and things like that.
He probably would have gone ballistic, but he represents a much more right-wing element of the Tory party who hate the fact that they're in coalition with the Lib Dems, who think that David Cameron is on the wrong track, and therefore he's saying he's not surprised that lots of people, fellow Tories like him, might vote UKIP. He's probably more, UKIP orientated himself. So I think it's a measure of how kind of far to the centre a lot of Tories feel that their party's gone, and it's right where David Cameron's quite comfortable, and he quite likes, I think, being in a coalition with the Lib Dem because he's more on that side. He said to me at the weekend in an interview I did with him that he wasn't a Thatcherite and that he thought that he was more socially liberal. But it's not helpful.
David, clearly you need to just butt in.
One question. How helpful has Lord Tebbit been to John Major, to Ian Duncan Smith, to Michael Howard, let alone to David Cameron?
Extremely unhelpful, but that's what he's there for. That's why he's become a bit of an...
Is that his job? All right, okay.
He's on his bike.
All right, okay. on to a very sobering story on the front of the Daily Mail. We'll be reporting this all day concerning David April Jones and that trial that's begun today. It's
a shocking day one of the trial there at Mole Crown Court. Of Mark Bridget. The Mail, and I suspect we'll get some of the other red tops later on, but I suspect they will have gone with this story as well. The chilling scenario, the Mail says, of what the Crown says happened to this innocent child from Machynlleth was outlined as Bridger went on trial, accused of abduction, murder and perverting the Court of Justice. He denies the charges, of course.
So this is the prosecution outlining their case today. It's about as grim as it's possible to imagine. This is a man who was looking at all sorts of child sex abuse images on his computer, who had looked at pictures of the Soham girls, who was obviously rather obsessed by the idea of abducting and doing horrible things to 5-year-olds. It really is about as horrendous as we could possibly have thought. And also this awful stuff about blood found in his house, her DNA and bone, and this guy was a slaughter man. He was a slaughter man. I mean, he was an expert in chopping up animals, so it couldn't really be more grim.
It couldn't be any worse, but no body. That actually probably is the worst thing, actually, certainly as far as the family is concerned. They're still having to grieve over this, and will do for some time. I mean, front of the Daily Express, April Jones murder trial. I probably killed her, but I don't know what happened next.
And the impact on the family and on the community.
These
tight communities in Mid Wales.
It's horrendous, and it's him saying that he may have run her over in his Land Rover, but he can't remember. I mean, but it's to do with the kind of shame of what he's done. I think it's awful.
Horrific. All right. Okay, I mean, he, of course, denies all those charges. We must make...
Although he doesn't deny that he probably killed her.
Yeah, but he does deny the charges, though. So, I mean, the Express continues. Front page, daily jab beats diabetes. Treatment also helps sufferers to lose...
I still think the best job in the national press is health editor of
the Daily Express.
Front page every day, guaranteed.
Here she is again.
Jo Wiley. She's on the radio, isn't she? Now she's the health editor.
Different Jo Wiley.
Okay.
Simple once-a-day jab could be a lifeline for at least 1.5 million diabetes patients.
It's type 2 diabetes, which is the stuff you get from eating too much.
The slightly more controllable.
I mean, this is diabetes of all types is a real issue
Yeah.
in our society.
And massively on the increase.
Yeah.
I have twin goddaughters who are both diabetic, not type 2, type 1.
Type
I mean,
1.
it's a terrible thing for people who have it. So anything that could, this is a jab which it says might well help. It's called lixilimumab, and it has a jab and it's meant to control weight loss and weight
And could save the NHS at least £70 million, we're told, over the next 5 years.
Well, it's one of the biggest burdens on the health service, along with dementia.
If this story is correct, which I'm sure it is.
It's the Express.
Which means it's correct. Absolutely. Quickly, on to the FT. Running out of time. Osborne makes growth plea to the Bank of England.
Well, this is the best quote in this is when he talks about overzealous focus on banking stability, that they shouldn't have an overzealous focus on banking stability, that we don't want the financial stability of the graveyard, as he puts it. But considering it was unstable banks who got us into the recession in the first place, well, I'm quite pro a bit of banking stability.
End of an era. So, in so many ways, at the Bank of England, with, of course, Mervyn King going at the end of June, and this new Financial Policy Committee coming in, and what is it going to be expected to do, and George Osborne changing his tune, really.
Well, it's all got to be about growth, hasn't it? I mean, growth is the buzzword, but
as we approach
more growth, less bank stability.
Indeed, I mean, as we head into an election in 2015, I suppose that's got to be the order of the day. Eleanor, David, it's great to have you with us. For now, we're going to get you back. You can't escape. I'm sorry.
Talking about older people.
The door's over there, but you're not going to escape. We're talking about older people. It's great to have you with us for this edition of The Papers. David and Eleanor will be with us again at 11:30, so do join us for that. But now, stay with us here on BBC News, because coming up, it's Sports Day.